Boy, can I help you?
Listen up. I'm bringing you the best content to ever exist in the door-to-door industry, from sales, leadership, recruiting, and personal development.
Well, why would I need that?
Because never before have we been able to collaborate with the top experts in their industries, sharing their secrets and techniques on what makes them the best.
Wait, who are you?
I'm your host, Sam Taggart, creator of the DDD Experts and DDD Con. Is there a place we can sit down?
Well, come on in.
All right, everybody. This is Sam Taggart, and I'm here with Jake Peden. He is the co-founder of Anthem Pest Control, and this is actually, believe it or not, his first full year knocking, and I think he's the first year rep I've ever had on my podcast. So congratulations for that, Jake. That's a big
awesome,
deal.
Man. It is a big deal. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, so breaking records his first year. He's already at 700 pest control accounts, and it is June 5th. So from January to June, he's already hit 700, so he's well on track to go do a Golden Door Award. He's a speaker at DDCon Virtual, so those that are registered, making sure to go watch his training tomorrow. And it's I'm just super excited to have you on the show. So a little bit about Jake. Yeah. He was a assistant strength and conditioning coach for the Atlanta Falcons, and he's done helped with the Jazz strength and training, and he's helped with BYU, and he's been a big part in the athletics, and kind of got in the door-to-door game a little late. So he's got an interesting story. We're going to today focus on really the grit it takes in the correlation between sports and this job. And he has a rich background in competing and strength and conditioning and watching teams thrive, lose, win, all sorts of fun backgrounds. So super excited. You probably worked with some really cool athletes. We'll kind of dive into that. And then really just what it takes to be mentally tough on this, like the mentality it takes to be consistently throwing in, because I bet you a lot of people listening to this are like, wait, you can't sell pest control in January and February. It's too cold, or there's no bugs or whatever,
Too much snow on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of people, are probably wondering, like, how does he do that? How do you do it so fast? Because we have these mental barriers that we all run into. So today we're going to kind of cover those things. Super excited having on the show, Jake. So
yeah,
tell us a little bit about you, and maybe just kind of how you got recruited. Because, essentially you co-founded or started your own company before even really getting recruited into the space. Coming in late, this is not the typical, I was in college and a guy knocked on my door and got me. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I was 21 years old, I did a mission for my church, for the LDS church. And when I came back, I wanted to knock doors and sell door to door. And I sat down with a handful of different companies and, a couple of different friends who were already in the industry. And, I even went out on a couple of blitzes with a few different companies in satellite, but, just timing and, not the right company, not the right fit, just didn't really work out at the time. And so I went, to college. I went to school full time. I go to school over the summer, obviously fall and spring, and just wanted to graduate as fast as I can so that I could get into the work field. The Utah Jazz head strength coach, who I believe now is one of their assistant coaches, he's a good buddy of mine and a big mentor of mine. And so I started following him around, working with the Jazz for a little bit when I was in college. And then I told him at the time I wanted to be a strength coach in the NBA, and he told me that I needed some experience at the collegiate level so I could work with a lot of different athletes. And so he told me to go down and see if BYU or Utah. I was going to Utah Valley University at the time.
Go Wolverines!
Go Wolverines, man. So I was going there. They didn't have a football team, and I wanted to work specifically with football. And so I went to BYU. I got connected with some people there, and then they hired me on as a student assistant strength coach. So I stayed there for 3 seasons, and then I got a degree in exercise science, and I went and worked for the Falcons for a couple of years. But the person that recruited me into door-to-door was my brother, Aaron Peden. He used to be a technician for Dish One, and he worked for a handful of other satellite retailers, and he now owns his own DirecTV retailer. But he was the one that they got me to leave the Falcons and got me to get into door-to-door.
Wow. So, I mean, it sounds like you were actually kind of like excited to get into door to door. Like it was something you were like itchy to do.
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of people are like, man, you worked your way through college all the way to the NFL stage, which
Yeah.
I guarantee there's a lot of people listening to this being like, wait, you left NFL to go knock
Yeah.
doors. Tell us about that transition a little bit.
I may touch on this a little bit in the training, but to go into a little bit more detail on that specific question, I remember I put a ton of hours in when I worked the Jazz and BYU, but especially the NFL. It was a different animal, and we worked really, really hard. We'd start our season basically mid-July, and we were 7 days a week until January 5th or 6th. So there was no days off, even on the days off where it was a bye week or, like the mandatory NFL day off on Tuesday for players. We always still worked. The coaches and, front office, we always still were in there working. And so I remember going down one day to the indoor from the weight room, and I was driving this golf cart across the field, and I would always see our GM, Thomas Dimitrov, out there walking around the field. He'd always have his headphones on, talking on his phone, making deals, talking to all these different people and agents and whatnot. And I remember looking at him one day and I was like, this man and myself, we put in probably the same amount of hours into football, different parts of the building, different jobs, different roles and titles, obviously. But in terms of the hours and the commitment to our profession, we're putting in about the same amount of work. And so I thought to myself, once I got down to this indoor and I was grabbing some Gatorade or, something to bring back up to the weight room. And I just thought to myself, there's a massive investment if you want to become a master in your field, a massive, massive investment. And he and myself, the investment that we were putting in, the investment that he had already put in doing, whatever it is that he did the previous 20 years to become a GM, his return and my return were drastically different, right? I was making with the Falcons probably $40,000 a year, which is obviously not very good, especially for the time that you put in. The guy above me was making probably 100, and then the head guy was around 250 to 300 grand. There's obviously no guarantees that you'll ever become a head guy, and once you do, no matter how credentialed you are or how much you continue to master your craft, the NFL is only going to pay you so much. And as a strength coach, it was about 250 to 300. So I thought to myself when I saw our GM, we're putting in similar amounts of time into this, but your return is millions of dollars and my return is millions less. So that's when it clicked for me. Okay, I need to get into a profession where I can put this amount of time that I'm putting in. I'm willing to put the time in. I'm willing to put the work in and develop my skills, but I want to make sure that my return can be maximized. And I felt like door to door was an incredible opportunity and just an incredible industry to get into because I had seen a lot of buddies go out and do it and do really, really well. And I felt like they're probably putting in half the amount of time that I put in maybe on a weekly basis here for this. And so, the hours that we would work during those 7 months out of the year are probably more than what most people would do in a 2, 3, 4 year span. I mean, it was just incredible. So I wanted to get into door to door because I felt like I could maximize my earnings and I could really see results from trying to master something and become really, really good at it. So door to door just made perfect sense to me.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about kind of what gets you fired up. Like, a lot of people, they almost like, I've heard people say like, well, if I didn't want to sacrifice the time or if I wanted to sacrifice the time, I would sell 1,000. Or if I wanted to, like it's always kind of like this, they always come up with this excuse, but naturally you got to have some kind of like wind behind your sails. Like what motivates you? What gets you going? Why sell such high volume and crank?
Yeah. Good question. So what really helped me was spending a lot of time over the previous 7 years with people who were the best in the world at what they did. It was pretty fascinating to spend time with. I remember training with, Julio Jones or Devontae Freeman or Matt Ryan. And, maybe people will argue here and there, their skill set, who their favorite players are. But in terms of just raw athletes, and, take Julio Jones, for example. I used to just watch him in practice and think to myself, you're probably top 1, 2, maybe 3 in the world at what you do. There's not the 6, 7 billion people on this earth. You're 1, 2, or 3 at what you do. And it was pretty incredible to be around people that were such elite performers. Coach Quinn, who, I only spent 1 year with. He's the head coach for the Falcons. He and I weren't really close, but we were pretty good friends there, and developed a pretty good relationship my last year there and his first year. And he was just, I don't think I've ever met somebody who was so obsessed with discovering their potential and helping other people to discover that in them. And so what really motivates me and what really gets me going is realizing that I can do something if I become just maniacal about it and dedicate my whole life to it. That really motivates me. It intrigues me. It's almost like a game. Like I'm, how good can I get at something? Coach Quinn would always talk about how tight can we get as a group? How good can we get? How much can we control the ball? How much can we? He was just obsessed with discovering how good we could possibly get. And what motivates me is the realization of it being a reality. So I'm not motivated to go out and work as hard as Julio Jones at football, because I'll never be as good at football as he will. But he knows how good he can become, so he's very motivated to develop that skill. And door-to-door in sales is a skill that anybody on planet Earth can develop. And if you can become a top 1% guy in sales, whatever you're selling, whether it's pest control or tractors, I mean, you're going to be really, really successful. And so I'd say number one, what motivates me is just discovering what I can do and realizing that I can do it if I'm willing to put in the time and the work. And then the other thing that really motivates me is somebody, I can't even remember who it is, and I say this all the time, and I wish I could remember who said it, but somebody told me when I was with the Falcons that the definition of hell is meeting the person on your last day on earth that you could have become.
Wow.
And when I think about that, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, that'd be a major bummer if my last day on earth I met the guy who I could have become. So that terrifies me. So that pushes me every single day to want to be as good as I possibly can so that I can be, the person that I was supposed to become. And I truly believe that the more successful you are, the more impact you can have on other people, and the more positive influence you can have on people around you, and you can just live a much more fulfilled life. I think happiness stems from progression. So whatever you do, you might as well just try and progress as much as you can when you're doing it.
I love that. Man, two awesome questions. I'm like literally taking notes because this is so good. But I two questions kind of popped up for me as you kind of spoke on this principle. And I think it's really interesting to dive into the correlation of NFL and working with some of these top athletes. What common characteristics did you see in the top athletes, like these, Julio and all these guys, and a top performer in our job? Like, what are some of the common characteristics that you see correlate? Because I really do see this as a game. It's a sport. The more we take this job like that, I think the more we perform. But we're putting on a performance every day. So I'm curious, what are those common characteristics that you see kind of convert?
I do. I think it's I think it's a sport as well. And I completely agree. It's a game, and, we're trying to go out and compete and win every day. And your greatest competition will obviously always be yourself. And, we even refer to, there's an in season, there's an off season, with door to door. And so I think that, from what I've seen, with the different athletes that I worked with, I would say the number one thing that made those guys a top 1%er, or made those guys a cut above, because once you get to the NFL, everybody's good, and everybody has ball skills, and everybody has speed, everybody can jump, everybody can do everything that you're supposed to do. And so what really separates somebody is, number one, I would say having a killer instinct. Athletes who are very, and same in this job as well, guys who are just top 1%ers, high performers in any industry, they have a killer instinct. And it's, once you've rushed for 100 yards in the first half, it doesn't matter. Like, you want to go out and rush for 100 more in the second half. And, there's just, you never, ever, ever stop. And different coaches have different philosophies about this, but in the NFL, for the most part, and as kids in sports, you're taught, okay, let's take our foot off the brake. Let's, the 10-run rule in baseball and all this. And I think that's really bad because in life, like you don't ever take your foot off the gas. It's hard to build momentum. So once you build it, you need to keep going and going and going. And the Falcons are a prime example of that, losing blowing a 28-3 halftime lead, or not even halftime, when they lost in the Super Bowl to the Patriots 2 years ago. And they were up 28-3. They stopped. They took their foot off the gas. So I think having a killer instinct, and, it's like the guy in this industry who goes out and, his goal is to sell 7 accounts in a day, but he's sold 7 by 3 o'clock. If you want to be an elite performer in a top 1% and somebody who can, separate yourself from the pack, well, the guy that separates himself will go out and sell 7 more between 3 and dark because, once he hit his goal, he wants to continue to climb and build and build and build and build. So, we throw out goals at the beginning of a correlation meeting, but I mean, my max goal, and I think it should be the same for everybody. If you want to be a high performer, your max goal should be your minimum goal. So like whatever you've thrown out on the board there for, hey, I want to get 4 today. Well, in reality, that should be your minimum. And once you hit that, now just see how far you can go past it.
I love that.
So I would say
your minimum.
Yeah. I would say having a killer instinct, being around those guys, they're the most competitive groups of people I've ever been around in my life. They want to win in every single thing that they do, and they take pride in winning. They take pride in, that's why you still see a lot of athletes who, they'll go out and they'll have a really good game that, the team will win, but their performance wasn't where it needed to be. And so they're still, a little bit disappointed because their performance wasn't where they knew that it should be. That's also why you see a guy who can go out and, I promised games where Matt Ryan was thrown for 300 yards and had a QB rating of 128. If your rating can even get that high, I think it's somewhere around there. And we lost. He was furious because he just wants to win. And so, competing and winning. Coach Quinn, I spent some years with Coach Smith before Quinn, and Coach Smith, if anybody knows, is a little bit older and has been around for a long time. But when Coach Quinn came in, I've never seen a man more competitive and a person who wanted to win more than him. And that was inspiring. It made me want to win in every single thing that I do.
And I think it's also being a coach, it's interesting how it rubs off on the players. I mean, the performance changed, seeing the shift from Coach Smith to Coach Quinn in a leadership standpoint, what effects did the players, I mean, maybe even same players, same people, but just having a different coach, a different level of leadership, what effects did you with the players and how their performance was?
Well, so I tell our guys all the time when we're talking about culture that when DQ came in his first year, he still had all the players that were there were all of Coach Smith's players, right? Everybody that he had drafted, or, Dimitrov, our GM, and Pioli, the assistant, the core group of guys that were with the Falcons, and even the core group now, were players that Q didn't draft. So, but if anybody remembers, when Q came in his first year with the Falcons, we started off hot. We went 6-0, and then we kind of tanked. We lost like 7 of our next 9. But the following year, they went to the Super Bowl, and that I wasn't there for that. That was when they left, when I left. But his second year, he took the team to the Super Bowl, which is still essentially the same core group of guys that were already there. But there was one thing that changed dramatically as soon as he walked into the building, and it was culture. As soon as he came in the building, he changed the culture, which changed the performance of the same players that we had from previous years. And so I think it's so key in door-to-door, and not, obviously in every industry, to create a really, really good culture, because it inspires performance and it inspires people to want to do more and do better. One thing that Q was so good at, and, this is for anybody who's like leading or wants to lead or wants to be a manager, one of the best leadership traits that Coach Quinn had was his ability to connect with everybody. So, you go out and you recruit 20, 30, 40 guys, you're going to have a lot of different personalities, and you're going to have some people in your group that fit in better with your group than others. And it's so important from a leadership standpoint to involve everybody and connect with everybody and make everybody feel a part of the team. And Coach Smith, in my opinion, just wasn't very good at that. He didn't really connect. The 2 years that I was there with Coach Smith, not one time did he say my name.
Wow.
And the second Quinn got there, when he introduced himself to me, or as we're introducing ourselves to each other, he said my name. He found out my name, and I was a nobody at the Falcons. I mean, I was the third man on the totem pole on the strength staff. I was a nobody. Obviously people knew who I was, but nobody knew who I was at the same time. But when Coach Quinn was there, he made it a point to say my name and when he introduced himself to me. And the first interaction that I really had with him outside of that, he was a big-time boxer, and he and I would box all the time. I would hold the mitts for him, and we would box a lot, after practice, on the road, in the hotel, in the locker room before games. That's how he got hyped. And I remember one time I went up to his office, or he told me to come up to his office to get his iPod, and there was a boxing playlist or something, that I was going to take to go down to the indoor and box with. So when I went up there, this is maybe like his first week there, my first real interaction with him. And as I get to the top of the stairs, his office was down the hall, and I just hear somebody bumping Bone Thugs East 1999. And I walk down, and it's him in his office, and it's just blasting. And I walk in, and, he daps me up. He gives me the iPod. He could connect to somebody from the inner city, which is not me, but he could connect to somebody from the streets, in Miami-Dade County, inner city, the same way that he could connect to a farm boy in Georgia. And he would just relate to everybody, make everybody feel a part of the team. So,
which I think's huge. I think it's so critical as a leader in our industry. You're leading a sales team, and I think people undervalue the importance of culture and the importance of powerful leadership. And a lot of times, how many times I've heard sales leaders say, man, I just need to get new guys, or man, my guys just can't do this, or man, I have a bad team. But it's like, took the same group of guys and turned them into a NFL Super Bowl team, which in my opinion, it's leadership. At the end, leading is really what's going to suck and pull out all the greatness in individuals. And
I'll tell you the other thing that he did as soon as he got in there, he implemented a ton of competition. We competed, and those guys competed in absolutely everything. He raised the ceiling in the team meeting room so we could put a basketball hoop in there. And before team meetings, people are coming up and they're shooting shots, competing. He put the little corn bag, that game, cornhole, put those all over the locker room. There was just competition in absolutely every single thing that we did outside of football. And I think that's important in door-to-door too, is get your guys competing. Get them competing with each other, get them competing with themselves, and just instill competition. So then they'll look at, when they go out and they knock on a door, they'll look at it as competition, and they're not going to be worried about somebody saying, hey, this, you can't solicit in here, or, hey, no, you guys came by here last week. Like all the things that kind of deter somebody and instill fear in a door-to-door guy. You don't care, because at that point you're just looking at that as your opponent, and you're competing against them, and you just want to win. So I think instilling that is really important.
I love that. I want to talk a little bit about the off season. I think a lot of people, they see the Sunday night football, they see the game, and they see the winning the Super Bowls and the 700 account, you on a podcast. They see you on a stage winning a Golden Door Award. They see you getting, driving a nice car or whatever. But I think a lot of times we don't get eyes in to the off season. We don't get to see what happened from July, or these strength and conditioning practices. And, when you were saying 7 days a week, the preparation, how does off season training in the NFL correlate to our off season training in our industry? When because a lot of people do run this seasonally.
Yeah, good question. So I think for me, it's, and for what we try and do here, well, I guess speaking on behalf of, I guess football, as cliche as it sounds, championships are 100% won in the off season. It's what you've done to prepare. And yes, you need a combination of some luck with, having some minimal injuries, and, timing also plays into that as well. But they really are one in the off season. And that's when for us as coaches, we would work, it's different for a player, they're off and, they go train and do their own thing oftentimes, but that's when we do the bulk of our work. And depending on how hard you have prepared for your season will really determine how far you'll go into the season. And the same thing here, when you're in, on the doors. So, most guys will knock, some guys will spend, maybe more or less 3 to 6 months, somewhere around there, knocking. And I guess some guys go a little bit longer, but it's funny during the off season for us in door to door in our industry here. If you want to get good, and we've got guys that have seen this right now, our top sellers here right now are all guys who worked a lot during the off season.
Yeah.
They practiced, they role played, they read a lot of books that we recommended and that they found that, helped them with sales, and they prepared themselves as much as they can. And for me, like, I looked at it as like, well, if I'm going to go out and if anybody's going to go out and sell door to door, if you've committed to a summer and you've committed to go out, May through August, it makes no sense at all to even do that if you don't prepare, your guts out prior, leading up to that. If you just go out and you just expect by selling, you're going to get better by July. I mean, you might see a little improvement, but not much. I mean, you've got to prepare and just train. And the level to which you train during the off season will dictate the level to which you can get to during the season.
Yeah. And I think that there's something to be said with that, because I think we don't, in our industry, I don't think a lot of people talk about it. They're like, oh, I was in school all the way till end of May, and I turned my school brain on, and I now turned my selling brain on, May 1st. And it's like, well, you should have turned your selling brain on quite a while ago in order to actually go perform, because you only got a 4 or 6 or whatever, 3 month, like however long you're selling for, like every day's got to count. And if you're trying to still, like, warm those selling muscles up, then good luck. And I think it's really cool. Like, you and Ben, you guys have, now subscribed to the D2D University. We're getting that all set up. But I think just like the passion and the willingness to invest into, the learning and the, training, you can tell that you and Ben and you other guys are really about putting together systems and culture and strategy around how to best train your people. So,
So I got to mention too, Mitch Matthews, our other business partner. He's the most talented human being I've ever met. And that's why we wanted to partner up with him. He played in the NFL. So he played football at BYU. He played in the NFL for the Chiefs and the Dolphins and the Browns. And this is his first year selling too. And he's at 500 service right now. And, he had a 200 month last month. He's already done 60 services in a week. He's never had any experience or exposure to door in his life until 2 months ago. And he and I are very similar, and part of my drive and part of, what makes me go and, how I've developed, what I have to this point is Mitch Matthews. He's an extremely talented human being.
That is so cool.
So he's got to be on the next podcast for sure.
Hey, but one thing I'm excited about is part of the deal setting you up is, I don't know if Ben told you, but we're getting some of your training on our D2DU for general stuff if you're open to it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd love to get some of your nuggets on pest control and Mitch and stuff like that to kind of share for the rest of the world out there that are part of the subscribers. So that'd be awesome. So last thing is just kind of like your mentality on the doors, being a top performer, you, Mitch, being in the NFL, playing at that high standard, when you knock a door, what are some of the things that go through your head? You know what I mean? It's almost like, okay, you're lining up on the scrimmage line, and it's like, it's almost that same thing. It's like every door is like a new play. That is a cool analogy. It's like, all right, we're back to line scrimmage. Hurry, huddle. I'm walking to the next door, and now I'm on scrimmage again. I mean, we can look at it like that. And so you're on the line of scrimmage. What's going through your head?
I mean, I think the most important thing, what really goes on in my head as soon as I knock on somebody's door is, it's kind of like Grant Cardone talks about, right? Like sell or be sold. Like either I'm going to sell you or you're going to, sell me, and I need to win. Like this is you versus me. and I need to win, and I need to win on as many doors as I possibly can. And it's crazy if guys will look at things like that, how it makes the job really fun. And it makes it seem like it's, it's not monotonous and it's not boring, because every door is another opportunity. And if you keep getting shut down over and over and over and over, who cares? Like, the only way I get discouraged in this job is if somebody said, look, you can only knock 273 doors this year. Good luck. Go out and get as many sales as you can. I mean, that would be stressful, and that would kind of be
so hard.
But I can knock as many as I can. And so, like you said, you line up the line of scrimmage. I need to win specific to our industry, and what I think needs to come across to somebody when you're knocking on their door. At least as far as pest control, we pitch pretty hard on a discount, right? Like, we're in their neighborhood and there's trucks out in their neighborhood servicing other homes. And so if they can get it done while we're out here, we're going to give them a discount. So I think it's so imperative that when you're knocking on somebody's door, somebody has to know and feel like they're getting a good deal, and they have to make the connection, and we have to make the connection for them and help them get there. We have to help them understand that deal will only come to fruition if they do it now.
Yep.
So as soon as they feel like they're getting a really good deal, and then they understand that deal has a timestamp on it and it leaves essentially when I do, then those are the two most important things. And so I try and get that across. And, I just try and be as sharp as I can when they open the door. I just think to myself, like, what would I want if somebody was knocking on my door trying to sell me? I mean, I wouldn't want to talk to some scrub kid who's got, who looks sloppy, who doesn't, look like he carries himself well. I'd want to talk to a professional, and somebody who's sharp and knew what they were talking about.
Yeah, and I think we can carry a certain level of professionalism as we go door to door, and I think a lot of people really undervalue that. It's funny, I ride a scooter door to door, and a lot of people are like, well, people aren't going to take you serious. And I was like, the second I start talking, they take me serious. Like, I hold myself at a high standard, and I speak with eloquency, and I speak, with good tone, and I look good. I just cut my hair because I was like, man, every summer I would have cut my hair anyway. Like, I wouldn't have knocked with a shave. Like, I would have been clean shaven, and I would have been buttoned up. And, for me, it's like, I want to, yeah, exactly. I think there's a level of professionalism that needs to happen instead of kind of this, oh yeah, hey, yeah, why aren't you buying it? You know what I mean? I think that there's like this punk mentality I think a lot of people sometimes give off. And I remember when I was 18, I probably had a bad habit of just being a smart A. I was young and mature, and I like to, mouth off to people. And I remember I get the cops called on me a heck of a lot more than, knocking, just because I had kind of this immature way of knocking. And I think that's almost like what brings a bad name to our industry, is like this immaturity that some people don't realize. Like, when you knock that door, it's affecting everybody in the future coming to that house. Everybody, 100%. Every way that person answers the door from now on, you made an impression on, because they're like, oh, if he's anything like that last guy, like, F that guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or if he's anything like that last guy, I probably should hear him out.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and that's why it's so critical to be just sharp as a tack on every door, because you don't know if the guy before you was somebody who was just dull as a butter knife, and that person will immediately make an association with you to him or her, and you got to make sure that you're best on every single door. Your first door has got to be treated like it's your last, and if every door is treated like that, then you're going to win a lot more than you'll lose. And that's really what it comes down to, is winning and losing. I mean, people talk a lot about how life's not all about winning, and that's the only thing it's about. It's about winning and everything that you do.
Yeah, it's about winning. It's like, you could go out in the neighborhood and make some sweet friends. Maybe mow some lady's yard that needs help. I mean, that'll only last you so long.
Yeah,
you gotta feed the fam. You gotta go win. I love it. Oh
yeah. So.
Well, let's wrap on that. I appreciate, Jake. I love this. Like, this gives me energy. I've been filled up. I've learned a lot. It makes me want to keep like talking to you, learning about, so I guess I'll just keep watching you tomorrow when you go speak. But I guess I could just do a continuation. But,
Yeah.
no, but I'm excited. I should get Mitch on here, and super excited to have you out. I'll see you in January.
Yeah.
We can meet in person. I'm trying to get out
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
Georgia, actually. There's
Yeah, we got to connect if you come out, man.
I know. I want to get to Georgia. But anyway, there's a question I always ask everybody at the end, and I always find it interesting. So if you had to give one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be for the door-to-door industry?
How you do one thing is how you do everything. That if you can live your life by that principle, and those one things that you do are good things, and that's how you're going to do everything. How people that succeed at the highest level, from what I've seen in my life, there's no task too small. There's no job that's unimportant. They treat every day like it's their last. How you do one thing is literally how you do everything. And I think that's so important in door to door. If you want to perform on the field the same way, if you want to perform on the doors, carry yourself in a certain way. Off the doors, have standards, wake up at a certain time, eat right, just live your life in a successful way and try and succeed in everything that you're doing. You'll succeed when you're performing, when you're out on the doors. So I would say, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Well, and it goes to show, it's like everybody wants to be in the NFL, but Mitch Matthews did everything possible to become an NFL athlete, meaning he was a winner.
Yeah.
He starts in door-to-door. He's a winner. What I mean? And some people point – it's funny. I'm reading in this book. This is super interesting that you say this, because a lot of people, what they do is they justify, and they like to use the word talented instead of associating grit to individual. And the reason why they say, well, he's just really talented. Mitch Matthews is just really talented. And what that does is it gives them an out. It gives them a way to say, I now feel good about myself for not being talented. So then it's like, he's talented, I'm not. And so then what we fail to do is we fail to associate grit. No, he just grinded so much freaking harder and was so much more wild focused. And how he does one thing is how he does everything, meaning he shows up to your job that you're supposed to be talented in. For the last 5 years you've been selling pest control, guess what? He's better than you now because how he does one thing, he's going to do it like that with everything. So you just need to say, what hacks do I need to focus on in the grit it's taking for me to become who I want to become, instead of just pawning it off to be like, oh, but they're just talented. So I think it's just a cop out. And, I think that's such a interesting, phenomena. I was just jamming on the other day, and I wanted to say it on something. So this was a good thread to jam on.
No, I totally agree, man. And it's very well said that people use it as a cop out and say, oh, well, I don't have the talent. He has the talent. That's why he got there. That's why he did this.
Yep.
No, I mean, there's a lot of things that a lot of other people could be doing right now that they just say that they can't because they associate it with talent and not grit. So
exactly. I love that. Okay. Well, appreciate you having on the show, Jake. We're excited to hear from you tomorrow.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.